Hey everybody, Dr. Phil here. This is going to be a video on regional economic integration in the wider context of international business. So let's start by talking about what is a free trade area. All barriers to the trade of goods and services among member countries are removed, but members determine their own trade policies with non-members. So a good example would be like the European Union. And this accounts for almost 90% of regional agreements. The European Free Trade Association, EFTA, between Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Switzerland. This is another good example. Other free trade areas include NAFTA, now replaced by what we call USMCA, United States, Mexico, and Canada. And we also have what's called a customs union. This eliminates trade barriers between member countries and adopts a common external trade policy. Most countries that enter a customs union desire further integration in the future. The Andean Community in South America established free trade between Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. In a common market, no barriers to trade between member countries, a common external trade policy, and the free movement of the factors of production. This requires significant harmony among members in fiscal, monetary, and employment policies. So, for example, Mercosur, this is an agreement between Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, which hopes to achieve this status. The Economic Union, countries committed to the free flow of products and factors of production between members, adoption of a common currency, harmonization of tax rates, and pursuit of a common external trade policy. This involves sacrificing a significant amount of national sovereignty, and a good example again is the European Union, the EU. A political union, independent states combined into a single union. This requires that a central political apparatus coordinate economic, social, and foreign policy for member states. The EU is headed toward at least partial political union. Not there yet, but it seems to be, heading in that direction. So what about the economic case for integration? Regional economic integration attempts to achieve additional gains from the free flow of trade and investment between countries beyond those attainable under international agreements such as the WTO, that's the World Trade Organization. Since it's easier to form an agreement with a few countries than across all nations, there's been a push toward regional economic integration. The more countries involved, the more perspectives that must be reconciled, and the harder it is to reach agreement. Now, the political case for integration, by linking countries together, making them more dependent on each other, and forming a structure where they regularly interact, the likelihood of violent conflict and war will decrease. By linking countries together, they have greater clout and are politically much stronger in dealing with other nations. And of course, the two great examples are the EU and NAFTA. What about some impediments to integration? It can be costly. While the nation may benefit from a regional free trade agreement, certain groups may lose. It results in a loss of national sovereignty. So this was a major concern of Great Britain, leading to a referendum on membership in the EU and its subsequent withdrawal. So what about regional economic integration? This only makes sense when the amount of trade it creates exceeds the amount it diverts, according to some economists. Trade creation occurs when low-cost producers within the free trade area replace high-cost domestic producers. Trade diversion occurs when higher-cost suppliers within the free trade area replace lower-cost external suppliers. Europe has two trade blocs: the European Union, with 27 members now that Britain has exited, the European Free Trade Association, with 4 members, I referenced that earlier, and the European Union, which is emerging as an economic and political superpower like the United States. So the evolution of the European Union is the result of the devastation of Western Europe during 2 world wars and desire for lasting peace, and a desire by European nations to hold their own on the world's political and economic stage. The forerunner of the EU was the European Coal and Steel Community, which was formed in 1951. The Treaty of Rome established the European Economic Community in 1957. The name changed to the EU in 1993 with the Maastricht Treaty. The number of members fell to 27 in 2020 when Britain exited the EU. Of course, it used to be 28. So with regards to the political structure of the European Union, the European Commission proposes EU legislation, implements it, and monitors compliance. The European Council is the ultimate controlling authority within the EU, and the European Parliament debates legislation proposed by the Commission and forwarded to it by the Council, For example, the Treaty of Lisbon increased power. And then the Court of Justice is the supreme appeals court for the EU. So in 1992, the Maastricht Treaty committed EU members to adopt a single currency, the euro. The euro is used by 20 of the member states. This created the Eurozone, encompassing 342 million EU citizens. Countries that participate have agreed to give up control of their monetary policy. However, Great Britain, Denmark, and Sweden were some countries that opted out. Many countries, particularly from Eastern Europe, have applied for membership. 10 countries joined in 2004, expanding the EU to 25 states. In 2007, Bulgaria and Romania joined. Croatia joined in 2013, bringing the membership to 28. Turkey has applied for membership, but it is not yet clear whether it will be accepted. So we have what we call the USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Despite positive results, there is political criticism of NAFTA from both the right and the left. NAFTA was renegotiated under the Trump administration and is now the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. Changes made to automobile, trade, dairy industry, and intellectual property rights. Critics see results in trade diversion rather than trade creation, and consequences may include higher costs than North American automobile producers and higher prices for consumers. And then the Andean Community, largely based on the EU model, but it failed by the mid-1980s. In the late 1980s, Latin American governments began to adopt free market economic policies. In the 1990s, the Andean Pact was relaunched as the Andean Community and now operates as a customs union. In 2003, it signed an agreement with Mercosur to restart negotiations towards the creation of a free trade area. The Andean Community now operates as a partial customs union. And then Mercosur. So this originated as a free trade pact between Brazil and Argentina. It's expanded to include Paraguay and Uruguay in 1990. Venezuela joined in 2012 but was suspended in 2016 for human rights violations. It's been successful at reducing trade barriers between member states. However, critics worry that Mercosur may be diverting trade rather than creating trade, and local firms are investing in industries that are not competitive on a worldwide basis. So a little bit about the various sort of regions, trade regions, economic regions in the world. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in a future video.